Michael used to think the answer was rest. Not rest in the shallow sense, but real rest. Time away, a pause long enough to feel like relief. And for a while that worked. He would slow down, take a breath, create space, and the intensity would soften. But what puzzled him was this. Even after the rest, the heaviness returned. Not as panic, not as anxiety, as weight. The kind that doesn't shout, the kind that simply accumulates. He noticed it one afternoon while walking down the street. Nothing was wrong, no deadlines pressing, no bad news arriving. The world for once was relatively quiet. And yet his body felt slightly ahead of itself, as if it were trying to arrive somewhere before he did. That's when something subtle clicked. He wasn't tired because he hadn't stopped. He was tired because everything in him was moving at the same speed. His thoughts, his concern for the world, his sense of responsibility, his desire to stay present and engaged. All of it arriving at once. Michael realized something he hadn't seen before. He had learned how to rest, but he had never learned how to pace himself. Rest is what you do after you've gone too far. Pace is what keeps you from leaving yourself in the first place. That distinction changed how he understood his overwhelm. It wasn't asking him to stop living, it was asking him to stop rushing his own experience. He began noticing how often he treated his days like something to get through, even when there was no emergency. As if life were a task list, as if slowness were a luxury reserved for exhaustion. He saw how deeply urgency had embedded itself into his system, not just in his schedule, but in his thinking, in his breathing, the way he listened to others, and even the way he tried to be present. So he tried something small, not a reset, not a retreat, just a change in how he moved through the moments. He drank his coffee without reading anything. He let conversations have pauses instead of filling them. He noticed when his chest tightened and chose to stay there for an extra breath. None of this fixed anything, but something eased. What surprised him wasn't a feeling of calm, it was a feeling of capacity. Life didn't suddenly feel light, it felt carryable. Michael realized that when he moved too quickly internally, even kind moments felt heavy. But when he slowed his pace of his attention, even difficult moments stopped overwhelming him. This wasn't about doing less. He still showed up, he still cared, he still paid attention to the world, but he stopped sprinting emotionally through moments that were never meant to be rushed. There was grief in that awareness, grief for how often he had overridden his own signals in the name of being informed, responsible, and prepared. Grief for how he had mistaken urgency for importance. But there was relief too, because pace doesn't require permission from life. It doesn't require everything to be settled. It is a relationship you establish with yourself. Moment by moment, Michael stopped asking, "Can I handle this?" and began asking, "At what speed can I stay present?" That question changed the texture of his days. He noticed that when he respected his pace, he didn't need as much recovery. The overwhelm didn't disappear, but it stopped demanding his full attention. It became background instead of burden. He was still living in the same world, still awake, still caring, but he was no longer dragging himself through it. If you're listening and recognizing this in yourself, the sense that rest doesn't quite restore you anymore, consider this gently. You may not need to stop. You may not need to escape. You may simply need a pace that allows you to remain inside your own life. Not slower than life, not faster than the world, just slow enough to stay. We'll keep finding this rhythm together.